Our second reading for today comes from the Gospel of Luke. And we enter into this reading in the middle of the story of Jesus as he reads from the scripture of Isaiah in his hometown synagogue of Nazareth. So if you were here last week, or if you know this story, you know that he reads from Isaiah and all of the people are amazed. Hear the word of the Lord from Luke's Gospel, beginning with the 21st verse. Then he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." And all spoke well of him and were amazed at the gracious words that came from his mouth. And they said, "Is this not Joseph's son?" He said to them, "Doubtless you will quote to me the proverb, 'Doctor, cure yourself.' And you will say, 'Do here also in the hometown of your own people the things that we have heard that you did in Capernaum.' And Jesus said to them then, 'Truly, truly, I tell you, no prophet is accepted in the prophet's hometown. But the truth is, there were many widows in Israel when Elijah, at his time, and when the heaven was shut up for 3 years and for 6 months, and there was a severe famine over all of the land. Yet Elijah was sent to none of them except to the widow at Zarephath in Sidon. There were also many lepers in Israel in the time of the prophet Elisha, and none of them was cleansed except Naaman the Syrian." Now when they heard all of this, all in the synagogue were filled with rage. They got up and they drove him out of town, and they led him to the brow of the hill on which their town was built, so that they might hurl him off the cliff. But he passed through the midst of them, and he went on his way. This is the gospel of the Lord. Will you pray with me? O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I invite you to imagine that you were there in the synagogue on that day. And perhaps you were with a friend. Here is what one friend said of how she experienced that moment. "We stood among the crowd that day, my friend and I, and we heard him unroll the scroll, a whisper of paper so gently cradled in his hands. And why the marker rested on that place in the book of Isaiah, where the words of Jubilee are declared, we never knew. We'd heard those words before. We'd heard the words declaring the year of the Lord's favor. We'd heard the words, and we welcomed them when we heard them again. Words of release, words of recovery, words of letting go. We dropped our jaws, however, with everyone else, amazed at the gracious words that spilled from Jesus' mouth. He said, "Today, this promise has been fulfilled in your hearing." These words are for you today. We praised him then. The hometown child grown to some notoriety. Hadn't he surprised his parents, Joseph and Mary, when they found him in the temple reading Torah with the rabbis? And wasn't he now recognized as a rabbi himself? Isn't that why we asked him to read scripture for us? We expected, I believe, to hear Jesus reinforce our party platform. We may even have hoped for an announcement that he would run for office. But a prophetic inauguration address from the one who claimed to be the Messiah? We didn't even know he'd been elected. Now that's the first part of the story from Luke's gospel message of how Jesus was received in his hometown. He reads from the book of Isaiah, the prophet who proclaims release and recovery. But it's also the prophet who proclaims, who advocates for letting go. Letting go of our exclusive claim and sharing God's favor. We pick up the reading today where Luke writes, "All spoke well of him, and they were amazed at the gracious words that came from his mouth. And they said, 'Is this not Joseph's son?'" Now, both of my high school English teachers, Ms. York from junior year and Ms. Dillingham from senior year, both of them would be quick to flag that sentence as the rarely to be used run-on sentence. I wonder if Luke had such a good English teacher. They taught me well to see where too many ands connect unrelated thoughts and therefore can confuse the reader. And so we might expect to find 2 or 3 separate sentences right here. And yet, Ms. York and Ms. Dillingham, one of the perks of being an adult is you get to call your teachers by their first names. And so now I call them Sarah and Nancy. They would also be quick to assert it is the writer's right to break the rules for the sake of poetry, for the sake of compounding complex meaning. And since this is the first time most of you are hearing me preach, I offer this as a warning. You may hear many a compounded and confusing thought. May I share with you how I'm experiencing God's sense of humor today? The last time that I spoke before such a large congregation here in Asheville, North Carolina, I spoke as a graduating senior of A.C. Reynolds High School, class of 1975. And I spoke from the pulpit of the First Baptist Church where we held our ceremonies in those days. Now I spoke, not because I had earned the honor, not as my mother spoke, She, the salutatorian of Fairview High School, class of 41. I spoke because my classmates asked me to speak. Now, I did not grow up in this town because my father, who was a wandering army man from Michigan and later California, that's to say, a Yankee from the West. Dad's work took us to places in Europe and Asia, and in the United States to places mostly west of the Mississippi. But when he retired, we returned to this area and to my mother's people, the Sales clan from Fairview, with a few of the Earwood tribe grafted to their vine. If any of you here today are distant or near cousins, I understand if you wait. In fact, I caution you to wait to claim any kinship with me until after you've heard me preach. But while I'm not exactly a hometown prophet, I imagine God is smiling today about how, after my own wanderings, here I am in Asheville, North Carolina. Here I stand, and apparently I can do no other. Some of you may be asking yourself, isn't that Irene's daughter? Or isn't that Will Cameron's mom? And isn't this Joseph's son? The congregation of Nazareth asked Jesus. First, they praise him. All of them praised him together. They're amazed at the words that come from his mouth, and therefore they claim him as kin. Isn't this Joseph's son? Isn't he one of us? Joel Green, in the 1990s edition of the New International Commentary on the New Testament, Joel Green characterizes this question as a subtle joke between Luke, the narrator, and the reader. Because we, Luke's readers, we know that Jesus is Son of God and not son of Joseph alone. We may laugh along with Luke as Jesus begins to make clear that he does not come to be domesticated by his own people, but he comes to fulfill God's wild gardening purpose. God will sow and reap for widows and for lepers. We might laugh, we might chuckle along with Luke until in our hearing, literally, until our ears register that the joke is also on us. Jesus comes not to be domesticated by those who claim him, but to fulfill the purposes of God unto all the earth and beyond. And so when they heard this, they were all filled with rage, Luke tells us. What did Jesus say that would so fill them with rage that they collectively pushed him away, forced him to leave the synagogue, moved him out of the congregation, and to use Luke's hyperbole, they sought to throw him off the cliff? What was it? We could explore this question, and we could choose either reference that Jesus makes to how God sends prophets and Red Cross workers to outsiders, to people of other faiths, and to despicables alike. We could track down the unnamed starving widow's story, or the story of Naaman the leper. We could move forward. We could move forward with Luke's gospel into the second acts of his narrative. We could follow Jesus' followers as they reenact what Jesus did, speaking of God's purpose at their own peril. We could choose Silas and Paul, for example, and how when they spoke of God's purpose, they were jailed. And how then God provides a means for their release from prison, which in turn leads their jailer and his whole household to believe. We could look to the past. We could speculate on the future. Or we could stay right here in this moment, in this hour of worship. In this here and in this now, then let us ask ourselves, what word from the Lord do we hear today? Will it harden my heart? What word could this preacher speak to me that would enrage me? What word could I hear from the Lord that would so enrage us collectively, we the people, that we would effectively kill the messenger, or at the very least, never ask her to preach in our congregation again? Let's bring this home. Name in your mind the person or the group of people. Name the despicable ones, or call to mind the nameless widows and children. Call to mind those you fear will receive the bread that by rights, you reason, belongs to you. Name in your heart the person or persons on whom you see God's favor resting today, and you resent it. And feel the fury that causes you. If we allow ourselves to notice this growing rage among us, then we have understood this text from Luke's gospel today. And we have allowed the text to understand us, to know that we have a desire for privilege, both by our association with others and by our distinction from some. Let that rage burn within you for a moment. Let it gather its fire. Let the rage bubble up in your gut like acid reflux burning through your throat. And know that if you keep it down, it will cause a festering ulcer. Know also that even if you are a doctor, as I am a doctor, a ministry, whatever that must mean, you cannot heal yourself of this rage. And that's another bit of the holy humor that Luke the physician shares in his gospel. Friends, this is the good news. Rage is a gift from God for the people of God. When we feast on that rage in our minds and we ask God to give us the heart of Jesus, God has promised to turn the rage into courage. And God will give us the courage then to go to all whom God sends us and to speak the words, to sing the words that God commands. Now, I'm not going to tell you it gets easier to go and to speak. I'm not going to tell you it gets easier either to stay put. I suspect, though I don't know from experience, that it is easier to go find a more receptive audience than to stay in place, to defect in place and speak again and again and again until God's word is heard. I've tried both. I've tried going and I've tried staying, and neither one gets easier. I'm not going to tell you that the touch of God to put the words in your mouth is a gentle touch, like a butterfly kiss on the lips. No, because it feels more like a rough hand persistently shaking you until you wake up from the dream. And it's that shocking claim that God's foreknowing before your birth, that God has consecrated you and appointed you to stand and to speak. It is that foreknowledge that leads us to declare, this is the word of the Lord. And then to say, thanks be to God. So Jeremiah knew as a boy that God putting words into your mouth would not be a comforting touch. Is it any wonder that he resisted? As if he had a choice to do so. And when we hear of Jeremiah's appointment as a prophet to the nations, I wonder that God consecrates me, consecrates you to this office as well. I want to protest. Oh, Lord God, I am only an old woman. Truly, my short-term memory fails me, and I really do forget what to say. But the Lord says right back at me, do not say, I am only. For today I appoint you to pluck up and to pull down, to build and to plant. And do not be afraid, for I am with you always, always, says the Lord. God's word in our mouths and in the meditations of our hearts, they are powerful. They are dangerous, and they are life-giving. They pluck up and they pull down what must be destroyed. But they also plant seeds and build up the structures that support life. And it is for this alone that we are able to pray and to pray boldly. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to incite your love, O God, our Creator, our Sustainer, and our Redeemer. Amen.